in the end.
Before J.J. Abrams became Jar Jar Abrams by some, he had a little action thriller from the early 2000s to the start of the mid-2000s called Alias. In case you missed out, Alias was this drama action espionage show that aired on ABC for 5 seasons of 105 episodes from September 30th, 2001 to May 22nd, 2006. It followed Sydney Bristow, played by Jennifer Garner, a double agent for the CIA posing as an operative for a criminal organization known as SD6. The show's action, combined with some themes of family, prophecy, trust/betrayal, underground operations, and later seasons' character development, helped make Alias an engaging show for the time, and I still think it holds up well. It was also a part of that era in the late 90s to early 2000s that had a lot of shows with strong female protagonists before people did it to score brownie points. Such other shows include Buffy, Xena, La Femme Nikita, and Dark Angel, so go watch Alias if you haven't. Naturally, with such a successful show, the concept would also make for a pretty good game, right? That is, until you see who made it. Yep. Just like every other licensed game schlock of that era, it was made by Acclaim, specifically developed by their Cheltenham studios. Hell, it was the last one made by said studio before Acclaim went under. It seems this game was in development for some time, seeing as how it takes place in an earlier season, and when it came out, the show was on Season 3. It was originally supposed to come out in fall of 2003, but likely because of Acclaim's troubles, it was delayed. Despite also bringing in many of the show's talent, with the game's plot being written by Breen Fraser and Abrams himself, this game ended up nothing more than a clunky, mediocre action game. Alias, released on the PS2 and Xbox on April 7, 2004 for North America, and 1 day later for Europe. A PC version followed on May 28, 2004 for Europe, and June 17, 2004 for North America. What went wrong? Let's find out. The game's plot is set between episodes 19 and 20 of Season 2 of the show. Sydney is called in on her day off, so you already know something is going wrong. One of their fellow agents has disappeared, and his last message to the CIA had highly sensitive intel regarding Sydney's adversary in combat, Anna Espinosa, who by this point has gone rogue from K-Directorate to take over the followers of Rambaldi cult. She's also working with former SD6 head Arvin Sloan and gun for hire Julian Sark. It's up to Sydney, along with the usual supporters, Michael Vaughn, Marcus Dixon, Marshall Flinkman, and Jack Bristow to find out what's going on and get the information that may lead to this mysterious machine. Alias is primarily a third-person action game. You'll control Sydney for 95% of the game, and you'll even control Vaughn for one section that happens in their base of operations. The game mixes both action, stealth, and a bit of platforming. Guided by your support team, you'll go around the world to various locations doing standard spy stuff, hacking computers to get information, using disguises to blend in, and get into places you normally otherwise wouldn't. You know, the usual. The game's main method of combat is hand-to-hand, like the Buffy game, though ideally you'll want to use stealth to take out enemies when you can save yourself the grief of taking on a bunch of armed enemies when you only have your fist. You are a spy after all. Thankfully, you can use weapons. You have melee weapons and firearms, though you don't hold on to the firearms and keep collecting ammo for them. You'll also use gadgets to hack stuff, pick locks, and generally make your job easier. You'll find save points as well to save when needed, and you have a compass to guide you. Everything good so far, right? Well, not for long. Once you get into combat, this is where the game starts to fall apart. You have all these different types of attacks, like a quick and special attack, the latter of which does more damage. There are also back attacks, and you can block, dodge, counter, and disarm. All of it sounds in-depth, but in reality it's actually rather simple. In fact, the only time you'll need to use any of the other special stuff is if you're fighting armed enemies, or if you're fighting multiple enemies at once. Like, I don't know.
5 of them!
But for the most part, you'll be fine with the basic hit combo. Land that a few times to take out almost all basic enemies. Bosses do require a bit more effort though, so there is that. In fact, those are the only really difficult moments in the game. Certainly not because of the AI. The AI is only difficult, like I said, when fighting bosses, armed enemies, and multiple ones at once. Otherwise, they're kind of a pushover. On top of that, there are too many combinations to memorize, and they sometimes don't even work. You have to time it exactly, and be in the exact position to pull it off. If you're a tad bit off, the special moves don't work, and sometimes they don't even work at all. On top of that, some of the gadgets are a real pain in the ass, mainly the lockpick. You have to move the pick right with the pins to start the process. It's not too much of a problem on consoles with the analog stick, but it's a nightmare on PC with the mouse. Most of the other ones are fine though. Movement also isn't particularly well thought out. It leads to the game not being so well paced. Unless running, Sydney's walk is a bit slow for my taste. On top of that, you always feel you're in a hurry trying to move objects and performing the platforming. Say, to avoid an enemy that's walking down into a corridor, or trying to sneak by a camera. This might not have been a problem if the levels weren't so badly paced, but some of them can feel very dragged out. A couple of them are short, but most of them can go on for 30 minutes to an hour at a time. Even longer if you're playing for the first time, where you're probably going to die a few times, maybe more. And you combine that with the rough combat, the fact that the levels are often maze-like at times, the trial and error nature of the stealth, you have a game that feels much longer than it actually is. Die Hard fans may be fine with this, but everyone else is in for a rough time. Camera is competent for the most part. There may be a couple points where you get stuck or miss an enemy, but it does a decent enough job of keeping track of the action. The controls also work fine when they actually want to work, and you know which combinations to use in which situations. On the plus side, the game looks fine. The graphics are good, but not great. In-game models look accurate to the characters on the real show, and environment textures fit the levels fine, but some of them are a bit repetitive because of how the levels look. Other character textures look fine, objects look good, and the only real letdown are the FMV cutscenes where the models don't really look as good. The game's UI is pretty faithful to the show, and does a good job of making you feel like a spy, though the menus do feel a bit more time-consuming. Navigating to select gadgets in particular isn't the most ideal way to do it, and it's not as smooth as Metal Gear Solid. Sound is on point for this game. For starters, the music almost feels as if it was lifted from the show. This is in part thanks to show composer Michael Giacchino returning to compose the score alongside Chris Tilton. Music has familiar motifs to both Alias and fans of spy music in general. Sound effects are also good. Attacks with weapons sound like they should. Same with punches and firearms, though only the firearms really pack the major punch that you would expect. Other sound effects sound as they should and fit the situations well. Voice acting does the job good. Every major cast member reprised their role from the show. Jennifer Gardner, Michael Vartan, Victor Garber, Ron Rifkin, Carl Lumbly, Kevin Weissman, and David Anders are all here. Sadly, Neil Kaplan, who played a role at this point in the timeline, is not portrayed by Christian Slater, who I guess even though his big screen career was over and couldn't have cost that much, Acclaim couldn't afford him because of all the financial trouble they were in. And Gina Torres is MIA as Anna Espinosa. They didn't even get a decent sound alike for her. She sounds more like Olga Gurlukovich from Metal Gear Solid 2. There's not really any replay value here. Once you beat it, you have no reason to go back. Alias is a game that, while presenting the license with respect, the actual gameplay is a letdown. It looks, sounds, and can play well at times, but the game is bogged down with a confusing control scheme that doesn't fully work, lackluster AI that's only challenging in large amounts / armed with firearms, some troubling gadget controls, and the game really only feels like it was made for die-hard fans. Non-fans will probably have a hard time following the plot due to the fact that the game is so rooted into the show. I only recommend this game to die-hard fans of Alias who haven't played that, since they have the most to gain out of it. Everyone else, just play a different action game. I give Alias a 2.5 out of 5, and because of the PC version's further problems, I give that port a 2 out of 5. If you have to play this, play it on a console. You'll have a less frustrating time, but not by much. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff, and check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.